Today I'm going to talk to you about a very important documentary, American Factory, which came to my attention after it won an Oscar this year. I actually saw it back in January, but I'm very glad I waited to make this video until now because the themes are more relevant than ever given the current crisis. And don't worry, I'm not going to spoil the ending for you. Due to increasingly draconian and automated restrictions here, I will refer to a certain large eastern nation and its people as Redland and the Reds, and to a certain illness currently doing the rounds as the Crisis. American Factory is a story of what happened when a Red company decided to open a factory in America. It is a parable of globalist capitalism and multiculturalism more generally. And make no mistake, it is a vision of what the powers that be want for our future. In 2008, the GM plant in Dayton, Ohio closed, destroying 10,000 jobs and leaving the local community desperate and impoverished. It is now a familiar tale of the misery and instability brought to us by the modern globalized world. However, 7 years later in 2015, a Red company decided it was now cost-effective to come back to the US and took over the old GM site in Dayton to set up a high-tech factory producing glass for vehicles. And this is where the story really starts. At the presentation for prospective employees, the speaker says that his company, Fuyao, is, quote, melding Red culture with American culture, unquote. An audience member asks the question, is this a union shop? And in that disingenuous corporate language, the speaker answers, quote, it is our desire not to be, but we recognize that we need to do things right by our employees, unquote. A mere 6 minutes into the film, the battle lines have already been drawn. So, a new workforce is recruited, a new plant is built. Despite the underlying uncertainties and suspicions, everyone is generally optimistic about the new venture. It is, after all, the only game in town. The Red staff brought over to train the new recruits are briefed on life in the US and given some helpful tips on the cultural differences between them and the Americans. Meanwhile, preparations are being made for the arrival of the man controlling it all, Chairman Gao. While he does the rounds of his new factory, Chairman Gao soon asserts his authority over his new staff, picking up on trivialities and overruling concerns based on baffling assertions such as it won't ever rain in Ohio in October. No one dares contradict him. He is soon informed by his Red underlings that the American staff are falling short and lack aptitude. It soon becomes clear that this will not be a harmonious cultural marriage. When reflecting alone, some of the American staff reveal they are very grateful to have this new opportunity, while others highlight that they are now on less than half of their previous salary at GM and feel the conditions of employment are much worse. The Red staff and American staff start to mingle, and it is revealed that the Reds, due to their assignment in the US, are to be away from their families for 2 years, with no extra pay. The Red way of doing things starts to sink in with the American staff, and it seems they aren't in Ohio anymore. Disaster strikes at the opening ceremony when Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown declares he is in favor of unionization, much to the annoyance of Chairman Gao and his minions. The senator is quickly banned from all future visits to the plant. It soon becomes apparent that the workers cannot maintain product quality at the expected production speed, and there are also serious health and safety concerns, none of which bother the Red workforce, who have long since adapted to such conditions. The cultural fault lines are starting to widen, and this brings the issue of union representation front and center. Chairman Gao makes clear his intention to pull the plug should the company be forced to unionize. One very telling scene is when the chairman, prior to his departure back to Redland, addresses the Red workers. He's an open nationalist, as they all are. and he sees this project's primary purpose as improving the standing of his nation across the world. His workers are united in the same cause because of their common ethnic identity, something we lack in the West due to decades of liberal multiculturalism. Chairman Gao despairs of the American workers and decides that a delegation must come to Redland to see how it's really done. The Americans are about to discover what it really means to do things the Red way. The segment on the Americans' time in Redland is honestly painful to watch. Not only are the Americans mostly obese and badly dressed, but they are sloppy by comparison with the Reds. In this film, we see in microcosm how a once proud manufacturing nation, indeed a proud civilization, has lost its position to a nation more focused, unified, and committed to its shared vision. That said, in Redland, we soon see that there is a military-style conformity and exploitation of workers that would rightly horrify most of us. And the irony wasn't lost on me that all workers are members of the union in Redland, but of course there are unions, and then there are unions. The pictures you are seeing here are from the annual corporate get-together at Fuyao. Everyone you see is an employee or related to an employee. Even the people getting married en masse. The Reds give their heart and soul to their work. They very much live to work. Their families a distant secondary concern. That is the price of their economic miracle, and it is a dreadful price indeed. Of course, different cultures can learn from each other, they always have, but ultimately we are not them, and they are not us. As Rudyard Kipling once said, quotes, "O East is East, and West is West, and never the twain shall meet," unquote. Meanwhile, back in Dayton, things go from bad to worse. Staff morale continues to worsen in tandem with employment conditions. Red management techniques are being implemented, safety is being compromised, and tempers are fraying. Consequently, the formal push for unionization begins, and so does the company's response. I'm not going to tell you the outcome of that battle because I don't want to spoil a film I heartily recommend you see, but it is sobering and leaves you in no doubt that an epic clash of civilizations, of global forces, is only just beginning. The lessons of this film are many. We can talk about the amusing irony of leftists in America trying to educate communists about workers' rights. We can look at how so-called minorities are, despite their constant complaints, starting to realize how the America created by whites perhaps isn't so bad after all. And of course we can look at how the West has been damaged by multicultural discord and materialism, which have left us vulnerable to such intrusions from overseas. This is the intended future of capitalism in the West. A managerial class of immigrants brought in to establish new norms of economic and social life, to lord it over us and, should we complain, to confine us to destitution. We will simply be swapped out for a cheaper, more compliant workforce from across the border. And Trump, as the great patriot he proclaims himself to be, has already said he wants legal immigration at unprecedented levels to provide workers for such factories. He's building the American factory right before your eyes. This crisis has dragged the Red government and culture reluctantly into the spotlight, and it has highlighted just how alien they are to us in many ways. For very good reason, not many of us would ever want to live there. A few in our movement have held up the Reds' display of authoritarianism as a source of inspiration. But the European soul creates peaceful communities with a high quality of life and a strong rule of law that still respects the gifts and liberties of the individual. The Reds are not like us. We do not thrive under tyranny, but multicultural modernity has made us forget who we are, and it's that we must rediscover. It is of course right for us to be cautious and do what we can to contain this crisis and protect ourselves. The state does have a key role to play in this, but we do have to be careful not to fall into a Red-style tyranny. One could quite reasonably argue that we have started to head in that direction in the West already. Nationalists know that most Western states have already gone rogue against their people, and in this lockdown there is a great potential for globalist governments to abuse power further. So I advise you to keep an active mind. This crisis has given us pause to reassess what we value and the way we want to live our lives. It is a time of opportunities as well as threats, both foreign and domestic. In this crisis, while things are in flux, while the terrible cost of globalism is finally laid bare for all to see, we have to assert our right to be who we are in our own countries. But we don't need the tyranny of the Reds in order to recapture our destiny. We don't need the tacky material bribes of consumerism, and we don't need a migrant religion. We just need to look within ourselves. We are all we need. Until next time, be well.